All right, welcome everybody to the UXPA webinar about the UXPA mentorship program. I'm really excited to be here today with our panelists who all participated in the last mentorship cohort. To date, we've had 2, and we'll be kicking off our next mentorship program in February. If you're interested in participating in that, please visit our website and check out the mentorship tab. It hasn't been updated just yet, but it will be updated soon. And if you complete the mentee or mentor forms before the end of January, then you have the opportunity to participate in our February program. Also, just wanted to give a little shout out about our upcoming webinars. We have one in January on design leadership. We also have our annual conference taking place this year in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm really excited about that. So keep an eye on our website and on our social media channels for more information about all of the things. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and kick off our webinar today. I'd like to introduce our panelists. What I'd actually like to do is go around and everybody introduce yourselves, say a little bit about yourself, your name, your role, what you do outside of the UXPA mentorship program, and then state whether you were a mentor or mentee and why you joined the program. I'm excited to have Michelle Washington, Jennifer Nolte, Maria Haney, Shane McWhorter, and Jay Zabursky join us today. And I'll start. I'm Jen Romano Bergstrom. I've been on the UXPA board for 6 years. I just finished my my second term on the board, but I'm still very much involved in the mentorship program. And this was one of the initiatives that I started while I was on the board. So again, really excited to be talking with you all today and sharing a bit about this program and just in general mentorship, you know, in general, because I think it's really important to have mentors in the field. So Michelle, why don't you start?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Michelle Washington. I am a design researcher and strategist. I mainly work with nonprofits, cultural institutions, and startups. I am a mentee.
And why did you join the program?
Oh, my reasoning for joining is that I wanted to transition more into contractual and freelance work and expand that area. I'm here in New York City, so part of me joining was to make myself actually sign up for the New York City Women's Business Certification Program, which is rather lengthy and an arduous task. So I did start the process, and I'm halfway through it, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Jennifer?
Hi, my name is Jen. I am a UX researcher and librarian at Yale University. I am a mentee. Jay is my mentor. And I joined this program because I kind of got into UX about 5 years ago, really mostly on my own. We don't really have a lot of like established UX people in my part of the organization. So I was just looking for like confirmation that the things that I was doing were okay and not completely crazy or sort of out of bounds. I think that I was on the board of the Connecticut UX Professional Association as well. And I did that also to learn more about like what the profession was like. So yeah, I've gotten a lot out of this, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Welcome. And Maria.
Hello, my name is Maria Haney. I am a senior UX designer at a company called DigiCert in Utah. We're a certificate authority, and I work on several different projects for them. I joined the UX mentorship program through UXPA. This was my second one. I've participated in both of them, and I am just hungry for mentorship. I have accelerated pretty quickly in my career, which leads to a lot of questionings. I understand you, Jennifer, like, okay, is this really how we do it? Because I feel half the time I'm making stuff up. So it's nice for gut checks. A lot is a big one, but also a big reason because I do have mentorship opportunities in my current role, what I wanted was an outside perspective about how my role and what I'm able to do now and the challenges and the growth I have available to me, how that would fit in my larger career goal. So keeping some third-party perspectives open to me was really important.
Great. All right, Jay.
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm a UX designer at a startup called Maple. In my career, I've been at big companies, small companies, and I've been doing UX related stuff for a long time. So I'm a mentor, and I've been a mentee in the past. It was really useful, and I just, paying it back. So yeah, I'm happy to talk to people about their career, because it does turn out that there's a lot of stuff that has been done again and again, and you might as well benefit from other people's experience. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Shane.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shane McWhorter. I'm very proud to have been a member of UXPA since 2001. I head up the UX team at a chain of national hospitals, but I'm based in South Florida, so the weather here is fantastic. Appreciate it. And I was able to join the UXPA International Mentorship Program from the first cohort that we had, and I continue to enjoy it. The reason I signed up to be a mentor is because of my experience. I found that as folks are getting into UX or they're in UX, they may be getting into UX as a career transition, or they may be getting into UX with different backgrounds than having UX and it's new to them, or they may be new to UX, period. And all of those three things, you need more than just classroom training. You need a network of other eyes, an external view. And what often UX is in some sense the unicorn. So you may not have a large team of UX people to draw on. Other disciplines may have 10, 20 colleagues at a company where you can have that network. But UX people are often sometimes unique in their organization. So a program like this, the UXPA International Mentorship Program, allows folks like us, the UX people, who sometimes are hidden away back in a corner somewhere, to connect with each other.
Awesome. And Shane is the newest addition to the UXPA International Board. Congratulations.
Very proud. Thank you so much. I'm humbled and honored to be able to serve.
Awesome. Just by a show of hands, who is, we have oftentimes designers and researchers part of UXPA and part of the mentorship program. So of you, who is a researcher? And then designer?
Well, I do, my background is in design. I operated a design firm for a number of years in Dumbo, way before it was very chicy. And then after graduate school from SBA, started gradually transitioning into research. So I sit between like still being able to do design, but more research and strategy work. Okay.
Yeah, and this is, some teams have more of a hybrid approach. It's researcher and designer in one, where people kind of go back and forth. Okay, so let's talk about the program. What are some key takeaways? So being involved in this program, or even other mentorship programs that you may have been involved in, what are some things that you took away from the program? Some things that you were able to learn, or let's put it there. What are some things that you were able to learn, either as a mentor or a mentee, as a result of being in such a program?
I can comment on that. So, I think both Maria and I talked about kind of joining the program for the purpose of making sure that, we were doing working in this profession in the right way, right? And being able to talk to Jay as a resource, there are a couple of examples that I was able to bring to him to say, what is this? And he would reflect back to me like, yeah, that's normal, or no, that is so not normal. And that was really like validating for me, because it told me, the reactions that I'm having are sort of in line with what people in the profession might also sort of say. Like, so for instance, there was an argument over, I'm not going to bring up the whole example, but there was an argument over like sort of how to do user research and best practices and keeping the psychological safety of participants. And there was some controversy over whether the psychological safety of participants was as valuable or as protectable, or that protecting that safety should be prioritized. And I was horrified by that notion, and Jay was equally horrified. So it was really great to kind of feel like, okay, yeah, I'm reacting in the right ways. I'm developing the right muscle memory. I'm oriented correctly. So that was really valuable.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like being able to have a sounding board and talk about an issue and to be able to talk about those issues. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll speak up. I worked with Shane, who was my mentor. And it was a great experience for me because it was really pushing me more forward to think about my past skills that I have. Past skills, but working as a designer and how that relates to research and strategy, and being able to bring that into current projects or potential projects that I would be working on or were working on at the time. And also looking at like a project I was working on with kids from 4 to 7, doing interviews, and how I could also apply some of that and being more aware of body language for adults, which I had not really thought of comparing the two. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if anybody's ever worked with 4 to 7-year-old kids. Very interesting. Very interesting range of people to interview. So, I mean, the woman who says she works in libraries, I don't know if you've ever had interaction with younger people, like kids, tweens, or whatever.
Mostly higher ed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, college students?
Yeah. College students and graduate students.
Yeah, okay. But it was interesting, like just the whole process of also Shane being willing to answer any question that I had, or like giving me feedback on any thought, sharing a lot of his experiences based on any questions that I had. So I don't think he was ever at a loss for not being able to answer any of my questions or provide me with any information. One process that I did that I thought was extremely helpful in getting me to be more expressive and in telling my story and not downplaying like my background was to actually research myself. So I created this huge wall map of Post-it notes, which I did like probably 3 or 4 times to actually look at what I had done, what I do now, what I like to do, and what I want to do, which really have helped me think about like how I would want to work with cultural institutions and more with like nonprofits or startups.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Michelle. If I'd like to add to that, mentorship programs fill in gaps. And we as UX folks, we learn our craft. And I've heard so far on the panel that we want an extra pair of eyes to say, are we doing the right thing? And if you're just learning your craft, you're not getting that depth of when to use it, when not to use it, what's gonna come up. And 2 things you don't teach folks when you're learning the craft of the UX. One is that how do you sell yourself as a UX person? How do you take your prior experiences if you're going through a career change and make them positive values for your UX value to your organization or company. That's one set. But the other set is that there's so much to UX and the practice of UX that isn't the UX task itself. It's, not to use the term politics, but I said it, but all of the networking, the organization, the evangelizing, the persuasion, et cetera. Sometimes I've said that in organizations, I spend 95% of my time figuring out a way to be allowed to do UX, and then 5% of the time I actually get to do the UX. So the mentorship program allows folks like myself who have had to learn the ropes over time. That piece is often a gap in somebody's UX career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that, I guess, because there's just thinking about what I learned as a mentor from Jen, and the organizational issues was definitely a topic that came up. And it was interesting that even Jen works at a university, and so even in an more academic world, there was still some familiar topics that, for me as a mentor, is like, okay, well, I have maybe some advice that can help, but it also, gives me just a new look at my own situation and what's going on in my own company. So that it's always useful to get an outside, perspective on anything. And the question just reminds me too that actually I think I do have a couple more things to learn from Jen, because she had mentioned some data collection tooling that she put together that I never did get to see. So people are doing cool things all over the place. So there's always something to learn.
I love that. I love that it's a two-way direction. It's not just, oftentimes it's perceived as like the mentee has a lot to learn from the mentor, but I love that it goes in both directions. Like we learn from each other at all times, and being able to hear about others' experiences in their respective organizations. I find that really valuable as well when I'm working with people outside of my organization. That's awesome. Excuse me, Jay and Shane, can you say a little bit about some of the topics that come up? And we've already been touching on this a bit. Like, what are some of the topics that come up when you're working with mentees?
I'll go first this time. So there was, let's see. I think, well, I'll start. I think everybody is going to have a different experience, right? Jen and I talked about organizational issues, like just working with other teams or other departments, and how to, like Shane kind of mentioned, how to sell yourself or sell your experience and skills, and how do I show that this is going to be useful in this project. And we talked about, we talked about like some ethical, like as Jen mentioned, that was also quite interesting. I can't remember the last time somebody asked me about ethics in this field. It's so important. And just in terms of, how do I present myself as a UX researcher or, professional, whether it's like, what should I put on my resume, or what should I talk about when talking, if I want to think about switching, employers or whatever. So we covered a lot of bases.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jay. I'm also thinking back to my other mentee that I had, and what that mentee and Michelle had in common is quite a bit of experience in related fields that I felt as if we're being a little discounted. And the real power that we have with UX is the experience that we have, the unique experiences that we have. And once we start beginning to connect the dots, that there's analogies and metaphors there, and it gives us a narrative that we can use to explain UX concepts, or explain what we do, or explain value in the context of that prior experience, to harness that. So the topics we often talked about is how that information should be front of mind, and thinking about how you can use that to differentiate yourself as somebody with experience and very thoughtful, and be able to connect the dots. And even at a high level, the fact that you can do that and connect the dots between things, it shows that that's a skill that companies are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But even we got to talk about design too, because when Michelle was putting Post-it notes up on the wall, then we said, okay, now what? What if a Post-it note shouldn't fit in, we don't know, it can fit in 2 categories. And then it became a UX task, which is, well, how come color is that important? What about size? And so we got to then go into a fun information design process of telling your own story, because the story is complex. And so I was encouraging, when we're doing that, to capture that as an example, and that you can tell other people, or if you're applying for a job or showcasing what you did, about how you went to the store to buy Post-it notes to do this, and this is how the wall evolved, etc. That was real fun.
Yeah. And I've had mentees who want to spend time focusing on their resume, their CV, and maybe this is along the lines of what you were both saying earlier, like having how to pitch certain skill sets and make those marketable. So I've spent time working with people on their resumes and really better pitching, I would say, right? Like oftentimes people have these skills and these experiences, but they may not really adequately be pitching them properly, right? And it's almost a storytelling activity. You know, how do you take the experiences you've had and put them into a good story? So when you're sharing your experiences and going out for new roles, you can better present yourself, if you will. How about advice for folks who are interested in being a mentee? Maybe Maria, can we start with you? Can you share what advice, if somebody said, you know, I'm thinking about joining a program, I'm thinking about getting a mentor, what would you recommend?
I love this question so much. I think I've done several mentorship programs through UXPA. I'm involved in a group in the West Coast called Productive that has a mentorship program. And then through my master's program, I did mentorship and was a mentee and mentor in all of these situations. As well as academically, I participated as a mentor for Hyper Island, which is a graduate program in Europe. So I've done a couple different formats of this, and the number one reason I give to people who want to become a mentor, why you should, is 2 things. I think something that holds people back from becoming a mentee is like, I don't have big questions. I'm not sure what to work on. It's like, that's a question right there. You can use a mentorship for, is to help you figure out where those gaps are, to borrow the phrasing that was used earlier. If you feel like things are going well, you're not sure where to progress next, you don't need to have an articulate question to start a mentorship. You can use the mentorship to help you frame that question in the best way, and then to create action plans based off the reality of that question. So an example for me would be that one of the first mentorships that I felt like I actually was very successful at, I used the mentorship to craft, so I think it was the first UXPA session, there was a document that was shared with participants about framing the mentorship program with goals. Like there was like a 3-month goal. Yeah. I could be messing this up. And then maybe like a 2-year or 5-year plan, and just kind of using that as a starting point for the mentorship. So I was like, great, I don't really know how to do this very well. I'm going to start with this document. And the document was a blocker for me. I was like, I don't know for any of these. And so I worked with my mentor to figure out, okay, why can't I see where I'll be in 5 years? What are the things that are keeping me from seeing that? And for me, it was because I got to where I am somewhat faster than I expected. And a lot of my energy and effort got to where I am now. And I really hadn't thought the next step through yet, and how I want that to look. And so it became a bit, using mentorship, I also like to frame mentorship as a luxurious self-care moment, because it is, to me, quite a luxury to be in a position where you are the one responsible and owning your ambition and where you want to go next in your career, and not being able to just take whatever you can get, right? If you're in a position where you are able to craft that path forward and have choices in that path, I think mentorship is like a wise way of being a steward of that ambition and that opportunity you have. So those are the 2 ways I like to frame it. It can help you articulate what you should get out of mentorship. You can use mentorship to help teach you how to be a good mentee and to figure out where you're going in that process. And then also it can help you care for your career, own your ambition, and take responsibility of the privilege you have to have a career and how to move forward in that in a responsible way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that, because oftentimes people are thinking like, I need to have a concrete objective before engaging. And that's great. Like, you can come in and not have an objective and work together to define some objectives, or to realize there's some kind of like hole or something that you need to work through. Now, would you recommend that? Sorry, did you want to add to that?
I was just going to chime in to say that's correct thinking. If you don't think you have a question, you need a mentor to help you realize you have a lot of questions because you don't know what you don't know, and that fills that gap. The mentor is letting you know, hey, heads up, that there's a lot of things you could be leveling up on.
Well, I think. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say what Shane said. Not knowing what you don't know is such an integral part of this profession as well. It's just sort of being aware that there are things that you don't know, and again, the mentorship is kind of like, having another opinion to kind of help you test your assumptions and look at things a little bit differently, and leverage the experience that your mentor might have. But I find, like, I've encountered a couple of people that, in my journey through this profession, that have kind of come to UX from a like, I need a new career kind of perspective, not like a, but they don't quite make the leap into sort of the ethical and philosophical mindset. I think that is part of being a UX professional, and that was also something that I learned from Jay, that is a thing that UX people think a certain way, and they're supposed to, because that's part of their job. And if I could make one more comment, I really liked what you said, Maria, about the privilege of having a career and sharing that. I mentor a lot of college students as part of a program here in New Haven, and I see, the privilege of myself having a career and having, been working gainfully employed for 15 plus years as a privilege I want to share and pass on. So I really liked the way that you said that.
Now, what do you all think of the role of mentor and mentee in this type of ambiguous place, right? So, like, as a mentee, I'm not really sure. I don't know what I don't know, and I want to have a relationship and kind of have some guidance, but like, I don't know what this looks like. What would you say is the role of the mentee coming in versus the mentor, who is that kind of, I guess, more of a support role?
I sort of look at it as not thinking of your mentor as like a therapist or a counselor. I feel like it's the ability for both to listen and to be willing to, like everybody talked about, like just like being open and exploring new things, because everything's always changing quickly. And depending on what areas you're involved in, something may function totally different than another area. Like, I teach part-time as an adjunct in a graduate exhibition program. So a lot of times some of the projects that I'm working on sort of filter into the classroom. And sometimes the classroom projects filter into like what I'm working on. So I feel like there's always going to be some overlaps in what you gain in the world. Like, or like if you're working in a library and you're dealing with graduate students and undergraduate students and administrators and professors, that's so many different levels of dealing with different people that you couldn't make the assumption and for someone to say, oh, well, you just work at a university, and it has to be like this. It's never what it appears to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's also like being willing to constantly learn and not just like accept, as I said, like that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And to dovetail into that, our Michelle and myself, our schedule of how we connected was intentionally smaller bites, but more frequently, because the times, the sands of time shift from week to week. Different topics come up, and one part about the mentee mentorship program is if something specifically comes up in somebody's life, they want an opinion on it and not wait a month. So we were able to have a consistent schedule because it was a half an hour, and we had it weekly at a certain time. That for the most part worked, except for the holidays. And but occasionally then emails and whatnot that could fill in those gaps as well. But that allowed us to like take notes and say, I'm going to remember to talk to Michelle about this in 2 days when I talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
That was really helpful for me, like to do it like weekly, because it made me feel more accountable to what I wanted to achieve, and to also know that Shane said, okay, you got to fill out this big chart that you're working on and send me pictures, photographs, that I really actually had to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have like 2 weeks or 3 weeks to like do it. It's just like, boom, that week.
To procrastinate.
Yeah, I didn't want to use that word. It's like sort of
we all do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you met for 30 minutes once a week, and then also had email correspondences. How about the rest of you? What was the cadence like, and what did you think about the cadence?
We met, what was it, once every couple of weeks for about an hour. Yeah. And but honestly, like coming into this program, I was not expecting, anything. And so I was just willing to work with whoever the mentee was and figure out what was best. And either whether they wanted to talk about like more detailed, like work product kind of stuff, or as we talked about, higher level issues, like I was ready for really anything. So I think it really is it's a personal relationship that you have to develop, and hopefully, given this was like a 3-week program, pretty quickly, but see what works for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I've done all over the place. The UXPA mentorships I've done have been ad hoc meetings as needed. So we'll meet for about an hour, and then maybe every 2 or 3 weeks we would meet again with intermittent Slack, LinkedIn, or email messages in between.
Mm-hmm. And how'd that work out for you?
I like having less frequent interpersonal, like video chat cadence. Just for my time schedule, that was better. But as long as that's paired with a more immediate channel of like email or quick feedback, so that progress can be maintained and you don't lose that sense of accountability, right? If it's too long, you're just going to procrastinate until the night before the next meeting, right? Like no matter how long the distance was between the last meeting, you're just waiting till the night before to do it. So having a more frequent communication in between those, I think, is more effective, no matter how frequently you're meeting.
Mm-hmm. What do you all think? It sounds like you all did like whatever we want to call this, web meetings. Is that right? It was all web. Can you say a bit about that? And the reason why I ask is because oftentimes people will say that they would prefer in person. And as an international organization, that's difficult. We have people all over the world. So we try to get people in the same or close time zones at least to improve that. But it's difficult for us to match people who are, in the same town or something. But this seems to work. So I'd love to hear from you all what you think about meeting virtually, and if that's all right, or if you would still prefer to be in person, or what do you think?
I mean, it didn't bother me meeting virtually. I mean, I've done a local one with the UXPA New York chapter, and you have the option of meeting with the person on the phone or in person. I feel like meeting virtually, because you're pool and selection of mentors is probably more vast than what they have here just with the chapter, that you get a different breadth of knowledge and information. So Shane's in Florida where it's nice and sunny. I'm here where it's like cold and thinking about snow, although it's going to be 62 degrees tomorrow. So, but it's like nice to have someone that can say, you know, it's sunny here and I'm looking out at my pool. So that sort of breaks it up. But I mean, virtual is fine with me. And I would want to know what someone's doing different, like on the West Coast, because I always feel like based on regions, people operate in their fields very differently.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that is, people operate differently? Is that an asset, or is that a pro or a con of meeting from different areas?
I think it's an asset to find out how someone may tackle a very similar issue to yours that lives in California or in Seattle, and then you may be working on similar types of projects. I mean, we all are interested in ethics, so would be interested to like maybe focus like some sort of hangout group with everybody in the mentoring program, mentors and mentees, that covers like ethics and different areas of how people, you know, handle those issues. Mm-hmm. And maybe like sometime I'm working on projects that have nothing to do with technology in the beginning, but maybe more towards the end. So it might be interesting to find out what people that are not always hand-on with technical-based projects are doing, like with research.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to add, I think it's a strong value add that the UXPA program is international. If I want to find people who are at my level of career with similar experiences to me, that is easy for me to do. It is hard for me to find someone who is very different from me and geographically in a different place in their career with very different experiences, right? Because that's outside of my immediate group of people. That's easy for me to talk to. So I want to be mentored by someone as different from me as possible. And that's, I think, one of the biggest benefits of this program.
Great.
And the teleconference allows a much lower barrier of entry and scheduling. So you can have more teleconferences. You can fit in 30 minutes in the middle of your evening much more easily and regularly than if you had a face-to-face. But with teleconferences, it is face-to-face.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that. Cool, and I love the idea of the hangouts with mentors and mentees. In this cohort, well, actually in both, we had Slack, which was a nice way, I think, to connect people, but I think I would love to do more and connect people in different ways. So maybe doing some more like group chats and things, that would be nice.
Yeah.
What did you think about going into the program? Did you have explicit expectations going in? And if so, what were those expectations?
I think my biggest expectation was that I thought UXPA was pretty clear on making it known who drives it. So the mentee is driving. That's how I understood it. The mentee is the one who should be sort of framing the agendas, creating the meetings, like sort of putting these questions out there and then starting the conversation. And I thought that is helpful to know that that was an expectation both parties had. So neither is just waiting for the other one to get started or ask the question or whatever.
I found that being a mentor, part of being a mentor is knowing what can go south in a mentor-mentee relationship and how to be, in some sense, mentoring that as well, to know when the engagement might drop off and tricks you use for keeping that relationship going. So I had that expectation going in. I mentor UX off and on pretty consistently. So I was ready to jump in to see what value that I could provide, but also part of that value from a mentor point of view is the mentee doesn't know what to expect, or the mentee has never been in a mentor-mentee relationship before. So part of the mentorship from the mentor side is the best practices of how you can help out and provide some thought leadership on making sure that that mentor-mentee relationship stays connected.
Yeah, I think as a mentor, the thing maybe that I learned is you need to be encouraging, because the mentee might think that they're asking stupid questions or wasting your time, and it's usually not the case. But I think that needs to be kind of explicitly said, because yes, maybe you as an experienced practitioner have done this a million times, but that doesn't mean that your time is being wasted being asked about it or whatever, or helping somebody. So yeah, I didn't really have, like I said before, I didn't have any expectations about topics or anything like that. And I didn't, I think going into the next experience, that's probably one of the things I would take away from it, is just to be sure that that kind of groundwork is set, so that everybody's expectations are clear, and there's more sharing. So
I could say, like, even though on my application I indicated an agenda, I think for me going in, it was more about learning about myself, and that I found was something key that I needed to more or less adhere to, and being open. And I like to think of it as also being a community building way of gaining knowledge and meeting people and learning more about the area and field as it morphs and grows and changes.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to add a thought to what Jay said about expectations of the mentor-mentee relationship. It's not a teacher-student. Mm-hmm. It's not a boss-employee. It's a mentor-mentee. And one way of looking at it is you're being paired up, if you're a mentee, with, let's say, a version of yourself in the future. So in some sense, it's a peer relationship where you are mentoring somebody to guide them in a very kind of a similar path as yourself. And in that way, the mentor-mentee relationship is a bit of a big brother, big sister kind of a thing versus a teacher-student or a boss-employee. So you can be more candid. You can feel that no question is stupid, because you can trust that your mentor has done that a million times too. And that's the bond that you have. And that's value of mentor-mentee, is to say, no, you have a lot of value, you have a lot of creativity, you have a lot of potential, and to be encouraging, as we've heard on this call.
I really like that. Thanks.
Do you use any, or could you use any kind of props is the word that's coming to mind, to kind of do this expectation setting and goal setting? Like, might you use worksheets or activities or anything like that? Or is it more of a chat up front? How have you done this, or how might you do this?
Well, I want to add a little humor and say that we need to record some panelists and get some participants involved to see what it's like, because there may be some things lost in translation on a piece of paper, because the mentor-mentee relationship is a human connection. Yeah. So this particular format is a very good one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wouldn't want to be filling out like forms and whatever. I think it would diminish the relationship and would make it a little too rigid and formulaic.
Mm-hmm.
As I referenced earlier, the UXPA document, I don't remember what it's called, just kind of like as a way of introducing yourself, I actually did find that form to be very valuable because it forced me to articulate my thoughts, especially when I'm coming into a mentorship, not knowing exactly how to get the best out of it. I'm unable to fill this out. Here's why. Here's how I got here. Maybe the mentorship is a process of helping me get to the point where I could have answered these questions. So I found it helpful, introductory, and it was an accelerator. I've used versions of that, not necessarily my 3-month plan or my 5-year plan, just a written out version of my professional experience in my own words and what I perceive my strengths and weaknesses are, as an accelerator for starting the conversation. Like, here's like a quick sheet about me. We'll go over this in person, but just as a heads up. So I like having some artifacts to start with in the beginning. I think it just answers a lot of questions and helps get to a more personal connection faster if you can cover some ground outside of the meeting before you start to engage.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like a little bit upfront, you know, maybe like what the UXPA did, just getting a little preliminary information about who each person is, and then we shared that with the mentors and mentees. But then it sounds like really after that, it's really important to have the person connection and not to be then going into like completing worksheets and doing activities and things like that, but really to have the discussion.
Well, I would say it still can be in the mix when that's the appropriate thing to do. If I'm a mentor and I'm about to meet my mentee, and the mentee says, well, you know, I'm not the type that documents anything, or I get 10, 15 pages of research, those are two different kinds of people, and you want to mentor them differently because they have different goals. So they're both very valid people with valid careers and valid goals and expectations. So in some sense, that may be a tool for a mentor-mentee relationship if those are how the personalities and the goals are working out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have about 12 minutes left. I wanted to open up the floor for questions. If anybody on the line has questions, please feel free to type into the chat box, and we can make sure we have enough time to answer those. The other thing I just wanted to quickly share was that the mentorship information on our website has been updated. So I could just quickly show you what that looks like. This is our, can you see my screen? The mentorship page. So if you go into our website under membership, there's mentorship, and here's information about the next cohort, and you can easily click on the mentee form if you want a mentor, and click on the mentor for link if you're interested in becoming a mentee, if you'd like a mentor. And this next cohort will be February to April. So you'll want to complete that by the end of this month, and then we'll match folks up again. Let's see. So, okay, we have a question here. UX writer here. I'm sure that I could benefit from having a UX researcher or UX designer as a mentor. Are there any content strategists or UX writing folks in the mentor cohort? There tended to be more researchers and designers, but there were folks who were also content strategists. So for sure.
But I want to raise my hand there because I didn't raise my hand before, because it wouldn't be very accurate to say that I'm a UX designer or I'm a UX researcher. Being more of a UX strategist, I'm combining the design, the research, the content strategy, the writing, all of that together, connected to the business value. So folks, there's not just me that's available as a mentor, who, if you find yourself needing a sounding board to bounce your thoughts off of, but also there are folks who might wear many hats. So somebody who does UX research may also be a content strategist. So it's the folks who tend to do UX tend to wear many hats. So as mentors, there may be a good fit.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point, and thank you very much for pointing that out. I know when we were doing the matching, sometimes that was like, it was difficult to match people precisely. But that's a really good point. Like researchers or strategists, right, are covering so many different topics. It's not just like fitting into a little box. What would you say, why don't we go around, what would you say is the one thing that someone could do to make the most of their mentee-mentor relationship?
Schedule your meetings with your mentor, and stick to that. I think that was the knowing that I had that meeting like every couple of weeks was really helpful to sort of stay engaged.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It's a schedule. And then for your meetings, I tended to, for the most part, have a topic or some area of interest that I wanted to discuss or share or had questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I suggested to Michelle that if she had some ideas and could send them in an email a day or two in advance, that would give me the opportunity to prepare some materials or prepare some thoughts and get my head in the game, if that was possible. So sometimes that helps. But I do want to add that although we say schedule, it does sound tactical, like it has to be regular, but there's a very strong mentor-mentee psychological factor of a schedule that you keep, that if a mentee's UX life is a little crazy and they're looking for a mentor to say, is this crazy? And you're not showing up to meetings. You're not the anchor that's part of that mentee-mentor relationship. So that's setting a consistent time and that is taken very seriously. That seriousness is very much part of what the value that folks are getting out of that relationship.
Yeah, I would say, kind of echoing that, a bit of preparation goes a long way in getting your mentorship to be successful. And part of that preparation, yes, is tactical in the scheduling. And then the other part is taking those questions you have very seriously and taking a lot of effort and honesty, and taking the time for honest self-reflection. Be like, no, I don't want to just be here. Here's why I want to be there. Just like allowing yourself to be really honest with yourself and your mentor. Or else it will be a relationship that looks nice on paper, but you're not going to take it to heart and actually grow from it without those personal pieces of preparation in there.
I don't know if I'm really adding anything, but yeah, certainly, like this is a two-way relationship. You need to be authentic, and if your mentee needs you to actually think about something in advance or review something before talking about it, which we did at least once, like you make the time and you do it, as obviously not sacrificing anything important, but like you need to carve out the time more than, and it might be more than just the scheduled meeting time. So, and again, it will depend on what you've agreed to do and talk about and help with. And I don't know if you see these, there's also Q&A questions popping up here, not in the chat.
I want to quickly comment and agree with what Jay said. When we say, like, for instance, we met for a half an hour phone call once a week, that wasn't the only time that we were spending in this mentorship, UXPA International's mentorship program, because there's the preparation for it, just working out the schedule of when you could meet, if something needs to change. All of that is time that you're putting into it as well to make that maybe half an hour very high quality time, because finding a half an hour that you both can work together is more difficult, but the other pre-preparation is more flexible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a couple questions here. For the panelists who participated in more than one cohort, and I think this could be for mentor or mentee, has the relationship continued past the like formal time?
I can speak for me, it extended casually. So because the nature of the first UXPA mentorship that I participated in, the person I was paired with had a lot of health problems. And so our that came up unexpectedly. And so it changed to being a very more remote email and messaging relationship. And that's pretty easy to maintain updates with each other on LinkedIn and commenting on what each other's posting. So it's continued in that sort of sense that we are still a professional connection and we respond to each other professionally. I have not gone back and reached out to that person with questions that I would have were they my active mentor. For a couple of reasons. One is I have other mentors currently moving on to the second cohort. And I just want to be mindful of their time. So it's, for me, once the mentorship program has ended, it's turned to professional relationship and I don't maintain it as a mentor beyond the program.
Mm-hmm.
Jay said it was okay to bother him after the the mentorship finished, and I will. So.
Perfect.
I had to apologize to Michelle to say, well, we could keep talking, but I really recommend as a mentor that perhaps you find a completely different kind of mentor, take advantage of a program like this who has a different perspective, and you realize that maybe I was just crazy as a loon. So I think it'd be very valuable for to mix it up and to get different perspectives.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, you know, Maria, what you said, like being mindful of a mentor's time, I think that's great. But yeah, if your mentor is willing and able and you can continue the relationship, awesome. And certainly if you can tap into other folks too and learn and grow and, you know, just communicate with other people, I think that's really great. Another person asked, how many mentorship cohorts are typically run through the year and can you sign up for more than one cohort in a year? You certainly can. Last year, we just started this program last year. We had 2 cohorts. The next cohort is starting in February. So we'll see this year. I haven't planned the entire year yet, but there will be at least 2. Maybe we'll get 3 in this year, and they're 3-month programs. And again, if you know, you're welcome to have it outside of the 3 months, but the commitment if you join the program is to have it for 3 months. Somebody else had a question here that's outside of the program, but definitely about the profession. Would you say that people transitioning to UX work already need to have experience doing UX professionally, or does it make sense to participate if you're planning to transition in the next year or so?
I kind of read that as a mentorship program question. I think I read it as, should I wait to get in the mentorship program, or should I just do it now?
Mm-hmm. So what do you think?
I think there's plenty of us in this field that have experience with this, so why not, you know?
Yeah, for sure, do it now. Like, you have more questions than ever when you're like just figuring it out. So I think this would be maybe the most valuable time in your career, maybe to have a mentor would be when you're starting at this level.
People starting in the UX career path, many of them say, I thought I wanted to do this thing, and I ended up doing that thing. So somebody may be able to help guide you think through what you like to do, what you have done, what you're good at, right, Michelle?
Yes.
And
I agree.
think, oh, sorry. Though I think too, like, you know, I did a lot of like looking at sort of job descriptions and like what a UX professional actually does at the beginning of my career, and I think that what things look like on the outside is not a really good indicator of like what this work actually is, especially if you're reading like position postings that are like cuckoo bananas. They have all kinds of things in them.
Mm-hmm.
So talking to people who are actually doing the work, especially if you have no one else around you to really reflect what that work is back at you, is totally invaluable. And you know, it'll help you avoid those jobs that have a bunch of junk in them that have nothing to do with UX.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, we are at time. Thank you all so very much for joining. Thank you for being a part of the mentorship program. I hope to see you all again in the next cohort. And thank you everybody for joining us again. if you're interested in participating, please check out our website and the mentorship link, and you can join the next cohort. And this recording will be available soon online, so if you wanted to share this with others or go back and watch, or if you joined late, it'll be available to you.
Thank you.
Honored. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for this. Thank you.
It's great. Nice meeting everybody.
You too.
Likewise.
Happy Friday.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.